It's Ghost Queen. Oh my goodness. Let's fix my camera. We're not in scene, in frame. There we go. That's a little bit better. Hi guys, it's Ghost Queen. I'm a god awful mess, so let's just get that out of the way straight away. Haven't done my make. Even my glasses are dirty. God almighty in heaven with the angels. We're a bloody mess. A mess in a dress. Well, we're not in a dress, but we are a mess. Remember the days when you used to have to do the walk of shame? Who is glad those days are behind us? I know I am. Whew. Okay. My crown's falling off and whatnot. So I wanted to pop on in the day today and say hello. I'm excited about a few things. I'm really excited about these new overlays. I love them. They're so cute. I just keep exploring and finding more and more new ones, and they're awesome. Really cute. I love them. Yay! So much fun. So, I had a little bit of a crazy morning. The pups are back, and the mama. They were here yesterday morning, and I walked them all home. And I had a chat with my friend who lives down the street and her deaf son. I guess he didn't have school yesterday because the flu is going around the school where he goes to school. Um, so they had canceled school and whatnot. So anyway, but yeah, the pups and mama dog I think are back at least probably for the week. I'm gonna help her out I think and have them back in the barn. Um, it's a delicate situation because I like this girl. I consider her a friend of mine, but I just think she's bitten off more than she can chew, and I don't think she's really aware of the time and responsibility and whatnot of caring for these pups or finding them a home or whatever. So, um, if they wake up and they're hungry, they now know to come over here to look for food. So, yeah, I sent her a text saying, like, look, let's talk about this. I'm still happy to try to help you find homes for some of these pups. Um, she is a single mom with a special needs child. She's struggling, and I know what it's like to sort of want to save the world and have a big heart and whatnot, but sometimes you have to just be aware of what you can handle in the moment and what you can't. And I think she may have bitten off more than she can chew. So, yeah, I am going to be offering to continue to help her home these pups. So, that will be happening. Um, and there's a big storm headed our way for tomorrow. And the last thing I want to be doing is like trudging through a storm over to her place. So I think we're going to bunk the mama and the four pups back in the barn today. Okay? So that's what's going on with that. Um, I need to do my nails because I just woke up and realized one had fallen off in the night. So I'm going to redo my nails. I think I'm going to put the acrylics on again like I did last time. I like these. They're easy to do. It's just like going to the salon, but you do them yourself, okay? So it's like these little acrylics, and then you paint them yourself. Now, we know Valentine's Day is around the corner. Um, it's February. It's the love month. I love this month. I'm all about the commercial love. I don't care if people don't like it. I do. Normally, I like it whether I'm in a relationship or not. I'm all about the love. I love to see it. I love all the hearts. Um, you know, I love it. I just love love. What can I say? So anyway, I did pick up. I'm using my red zombie bear backpack for this month to go with the red theme, and I bought some new red polish, which is this. You know, when I used to get my nails done in the salon, um, they always would use Opie polish, okay, which I do like, but it is pricey. This one's a little pricier too. Also, I found it at Sally's, and it's called Morgan Taylor, but I really like this color. It's called Good Gossip, and it's a really pretty sparkly red, okay? So I'm going to be doing that on my nails today. That's that. Um, and you can see that tonight when I stream. But what I am going to do right now is read through a little bit more of the comments on this Sims murder case. I want to get through it. Um, this is for the people that have an interest in the Sims case but don't necessarily want to do all the research themselves. I'm trying to just condense it a little, and you can always watch these videos at your leisure when you have time. So, I'm going to go through a little bit more of them today because I do want to move on to some bigger and better things eventually. But I do think this is a really interesting case. And I don't have any idea why it hasn't been solved at this point. To me, this seems like a solvable case. So, whether it's a little bit more pressure needs to be put on the suspect, I don't know. I don't even know if Charlie's still alive, but she may be. Maybe she'll be watching me too, since she was a goth back before goth was even had a name, and into going to funeral homes and whatnot. Um, yeah, maybe she'll be watching. Maybe her and Vern will both be watching. Maybe they'll be watching together. Who knows? But I do have, like I say, a little bit of interest in this case. Now, um, there's another interesting character who comes into play in the Sims murder case. He's somebody who also lives in Florida, and I'm going to talk about him a little bit more tonight. But I also find him an interesting character. There's a lot of interesting characters in this case. Um, hold on just 1 second, guys. 2 seconds. Just thinking of something. Okay, sorry about that. I'm back. I just had to check something. All right, so I'm just going to continue on and get through some of these comments. Now, like I said last night, I was unaware that Vernon was on the spectrum. Um, you know, being someone on the spectrum myself, I will say I have noticed there's a lot of people who like to say that, but who haven't been officially, professionally diagnosed. I don't know if Vernon was. Um, but I do know a lot of people go around saying they're autistic when they have no diagnosis, okay? So you can't self diagnose, you have to get a diagnosis from a professional. Don't know if he has or not. Um, Perhaps he has. But I know that it's not very common to see a lot of adults that are diagnosed um, yet. That's changing as time moves on. But anyway, moving along. I am going to mention this comment on this same thread that we've been talking about, this blog. I did it for Jody. Um, Somebody said to Vernon, as I read your responses to this early on, I immediately suspected you might be on the autism spectrum. I didn't, which is kind of surprising. That didn't initially just pop into my head. Later on, you commented you were indeed on the spectrum and have ADD. Being a parent of an autistic child, I often hear jokes that are not funny to people not on the spectrum. But people with autism will often laugh and repeat them. That's true. And the same thing happens with me. So I immediately recognized your ugly girl comment for what it was. And they might have a valid point there. But this person continues on. But what it doesn't explain is Charlie. She is the originator of that comment. No, you referred to her as homicidal. To me, an outsider and someone new to the case, she seems an instigator and to have a very dark personality, possibly antisocial disorder. Um, I wonder if you've considered the possibility she may have committed this crime and fueled suspicions about you. All right, I'm going to interject and just talk about that briefly. It's possible, but the thing is that with these types of violent crimes, I'm sorry, but it's usually men that commit these murders, not women. That's very uncommon and rare. Okay? Um, More than likely, I would suspect that they did it together and they've been covering for each other and then, conversely, accusing each other and making each other look guilty, depending on how they're getting along. That's my guess. Um, People saying that so many of the comments remind them of the Salem witch hunt. I think that's being a little dramatic, but I get what they're saying. Friend of The Sims wrote on March 1st, 2017, Vernon lied to the police the night of the murders. So did his girlfriend. He lied about being home. He wasn't home. People saw him out on the street. What he has said recently is far different than what he said in 1966. He's changed his story. Lies are evidence. Lies convict people all the time. He told the FSU documentary folks there is loving Mary and there is homicidal Mary, meaning she has almost like DID, a split personality. Um, that corroborated what others have said about her. She is capable. Vernon used to chat with friends about planning the perfect murder when he was in school. He thought about it plenty. No one else has ever verbally attacked the victims but these two. I think that is very significant. Part of the motive was anger and jealousy. They hated the Sims. The Sims were the all American family. Vernon and Mary had troubled home lives, a lousy time as teenagers. Vernon nearly drooled when he spoke of meeting 8-year-old Mary for the first time. If that doesn't give some insight into if that doesn't give some insight to his inclinations, to what to this crime, I don't know what would. Vernon thought with Campbell gone, it was safe to talk. He likes attention. He always did. What I will just say about that, I was also sort of an outsider growing up. I didn't have siblings. I came from a broken home with divorced parents. I was very odd. I was autistic myself. You know, I was always sort of on the fringe of things. And I remember when, kind of hooked up with a more normal family, in Maine where I used to summer, and how fun it was to sort of be with this, stable, a little well to do family, and, hang out with my girlfriend and her sisters and feel normal and whatnot. But despite all that, it never gave me homicidal, you know, tendencies. I didn't want to kill the normal families, or the more to do families or more stable families, more well off, however you want to put it. I never wanted to go around slaughtering them. So, yeah, I just don't know if that's, as far as Charlie is concerned, I don't know if that's a really accurate motive. Uh, Perhaps, but I think this story is a lot deeper and more complicated than people are imagining. Okay? And I do think it probably has to do with sexual deviance. That's my feeling on it. So, which people just didn't really know a lot about or understand back then in 1966. So, I'm going to look for some more of the two commenters I'm really paying attention to right now are Friend of Sims and Vernon. Um, so here we have again. Friend of Sims says, um, Anonymous asked whether Vernon Fox Sr. was still teaching at FSU in 1978. Yes, he was. He was still relatively young at that time. I don't believe he committed the crime, not at all, but law enforcement did tread lightly where Fox was concerned. And this is obviously Vernon's dad. Fox and others at FSU applied pressure on law enforcement to lay off Junior. One member of the LCSO team was a student of Fox, and it seems the latter treated Fox with deference, as might be expected of a student professor relationship. Didn't want to offend Senior too much nor offend FSU. In hindsight, that particular LEO probably had too much control over the course of this case. Junior was treated with greater care than, say, the average fellow from, say, Quincy, Woodville, or Coon Bottom might have been. Senior was worried about his son when the cops showed up to question his son and during the polygraph. Um, the emotion showed on the professor's face. He expressed his worry to his girlfriend, Ouida. That's an odd name I've never heard before. It's just like Ouija, but with a D. He worried that his boy was with Mary at the time of the homicide. The professor and Ouida got prank calls from Junior and Mary after the murders. Was it a warning? And then Friend of Sims goes on to say, it is common for murderers to try to involve themselves in the investigation. It is. To offer help, to offer theories and explanations, to say they saw a car that might have been involved. There are two people that tried to help more than any other. I think we know who I'm referring to. And for people that supposedly did not know the Sims family at all, in any way, shape, or form, those two individuals sure seem to care a great deal about the case. Mary visited law enforcement repeatedly in 66 and 67. It was always, if I say I was in that house, it's going to create big problems for me. Well, yeah, when you're an accessory to murder, it usually does. hmm. Someone on March 30th of 2017 said, I find it interesting that Vernon just all of a sudden decided not to respond anymore. Does anyone know where homicidal Mary is? I don't imagine that she would be too happy about the things that Vernon has been saying about her. Friend of Sims replies and says, the one who once was known by the nickname Morticia now lives in Jacksonville. So, um, I don't know what the results of the DNA tests were. I would have to research deeper into that to find out, which I may do if there's an interest. But I'm going to just skim through here and see which comments might be relevant. And I'm watching the dates here to see what might be some that were left last year in 2019. Someone is commenting and saying, I don't know the suspect and he has said some weird things, but that doesn't make him guilty. And I do agree with that. Um, just because he's strange doesn't mean he's a murderer. However, I also agree with the other commenter that says a lot of times the perpetrators of the crime, they do like to insert themselves in the case. And like I say, if I hadn't done something and it was God knows how many years later and people were still sort of talking about me, like I did have something to do with it, I think I would probably be more apt to ignore it rather than to just go on to attack every single commenter on a blog. Okay? Now, on June 3rd of 2017, and I think this is the first comment by this individual that I've seen. I could be wrong, but it's Jeremy Mutz, and that's who I'm going to go on to speak about a little bit this evening. So he says he's responding to a commenter, and I will read the comment that he's responding to just because, so you don't get lost here. So JW says, I would say from your comments that you did not live in Tallahassee at the time of these murders. The subject isn't a scapegoat. He was well known to law enforcement for other activities like hobbing. I'm sorry. He's misspelled this word, but I'm assuming he means hobbling the horses in Styles pasture, the Tallahassee Mall area. Um, that doesn't sound very nice. And as you know, hey Rose, as you know, hurting animals is also an indicator of, usually like a psychopathic personality. The day after the murders, the actions of Vernon and Charlie called attention to themselves. As far as law enforcement messing up, this was a quiet little town. Nothing like this had ever happened, and people were ill prepared to handle this. There was no FDLE, there was just the Florida Sheriff's Bureau with a limited staff. The crime scene investigator, who lived just doors from the Sims murder, had to be called back to Tallahassee from another crime scene to start the investigation. Of course, before he could get on scene, every law enforcement in Leon County had been through the scene. That also included the ambulance attendants. Go ask Rocky Beavis about his interaction with Vernon Fox's girlfriend the night of the murders. He was the ambulance attendant helping his father. When you place yourself at the scene and you keep drawing attention to yourself, people wonder what's your interest. When you make statements that people know are untrue, the spotlight is going to shine on you and your friend. Well, it's not just his friend, it's his ex wife. Having lived in that area before and after the murders, I did not go hang around the scene and make a spectacle of myself. I wondered, just like the rest of Tallahassee, what happened and when will we know something. So, Jeremy Mutz replies and says, wow, that is some new information. Abuse of animals is significant as a precursor crime. True. Not the first time I've heard that brought up in regards to this couple, but the incident with the horses is something I had not heard. I will say the Sheriff's Bureau, although small, was an excellent organization, and they did have another big case at the time, the Maxey case in Citrus County. The Sheriff's Bureau people took 12 hours to process that scene. They were thorough. I'd like to know more about the female's actions the night of the murders, as you mentioned. I know she sought out two police officers before they made their rounds to her house for the neighborhood's canvass. It's not uncommon for suspects to intrude on the investigation, approaching officers or hanging around candlelight vigils, etc. Part of that story is that they want to know what the police know. I think every lead should be examined in this case and every suspect examined. Rule them out or build the case against them. But these two check off every box. Yes, some of it is circumstantial. Being weird doesn't make someone a killer. But an extreme interest in death and bodies can't be ignored. I have an extreme interest in death, and I certainly don't go around killing people. So, yeah. The circumstantial evidence in this case is powerful stuff. Circumstantial evidence, though, usually doesn't get a person convicted. And a lot of times that is the concern, is that if you're only dealing with circumstantial evidence, you don't have enough to get a conviction, which is why some of the times these people are walking around free and nobody understands why. It's just because they couldn't build a case. And when you do convict someone on circumstantial evidence, then it's looked at as not really fair. And I do think that happens a lot of times in law enforcement is they need someone to convict, especially if the crime is emotional, and creating a lot of emotions within the public. Then they need to convict somebody to appease the public. And in those types of cases, they may end up convicting someone wrongly based on circumstantial evidence. And that sort of stuff does happen, and we will talk about that a little bit more in the future. Okay. Continuing with Jeremy's comment, the circumstantial evidence in this case is powerful stuff. As Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, memories may fade and witnesses dissemble, but circumstances never lie. We have successfully prosecuted cases without a body locally, and that has been done many, many times in other jurisdictions. No body, no confession, murders go to trial. Here we have a murder with 3 bodies, and we have numerous incriminating statements, yet no prosecution. Jeremy Mutz. Now, I want you, anybody who's watching this now or watches this later, I want you to make note of that name, Jeremy Mutz, because we're going to talk about him tonight. And he's an important figure in this case, I believe. Excuse me. Okay, so on June 4th, 2017, Jeremy Mutz says, I still have hope that this case will be solved. We have tremendous talent in area law enforcement. He means there's a lot of good cops, I guess, and law enforcement people in the Tallahassee, Florida area. We actually had commitments from the state attorney's office, TPD, and FDLE to work this case last year. Now, he's saying this in June of 2017. Here it is, 2020. I don't think we've seen any movement on this case. But, don't quote me. I am going to research it a little bit more. In the meantime, I'm going to crack open an Orangina, which used to be called Aurelia a long time ago. You can hear my throat is still really scratchy, but I'm pushing through. Okay. Actually, while I'm reading, I'm also going to dump some little styrofoam balls into my Nickelodeon slime so I have something to play with my hands. I didn't know you were sick, Rose. I know everybody is sick right now. My mod Lori is sick. She's fighting off a bad infection. It's the time of year. Everybody gets sick this time of year. I know a lot of people have been ill, and sorry to hear that, and hope you feel better. I'm lucky I never get sick. Part of my secret is I'm always saying I never get sick. Careful what you conjure. Both of the dogs are outside. I might have to check up on them for a minute just to make sure they're not causing any trouble. While I'm pausing here, I will say this coming weekend I'm doing an expose on a couple of people in the paranormal. It will be part of my series, which has long been on pause, my 13 Reasons Why series. And This is a pretty big expose. I've been sitting on it for a long time. I was waiting for the holidays to pass. Um, I'm not completely and utterly heartless. And I was also waiting to see what these people would do, as I had a feeling that they would be able to tell um, if they were sort of keeping an eye on what I was up to. I had a feeling these people would be able to tell that I knew, that I know what you did last summer. That sort of thing. And I was hoping they would do the right thing and just sort of fade off into the distance, but it doesn't seem that that is what their choice is going to be. I don't like to publicly humiliate people. I don't. Um, Nobody likes to be humiliated or embarrassed. I've been through it myself. Nobody likes that. It's not enjoyable. But, and I'm certainly not the paranormal cop. I don't go around, you know, being the paranormal cop. That's not my thing. It's not what I intend to do. But if someone close to me has been hurt by someone else or whatnot, certainly I'm going to take an interest and I'm going to try to make sure that whoever hurt my friend doesn't do that to anyone else. And as far as I'm concerned, that if these people are still running around in the paranormal, then they are still out there possibly wanting to hurt or take advantage of someone else. And I don't like to see that happen in my field. And yes, it's my field just as much as anybody else. And here on my channel, it is a monarchy. It's a monarchy run by me. Everyone else can do what they like on their channels, but this is not a democracy. This is a monarchy. And Ghost Queen's in charge. Oh, I am making a mess, aren't I? Okay, I've got some slime to play with while I talk. All right, so you might want to tune in this weekend. That's going to be sort of interesting for those of you who are OG YouTube paranormal people. Okay? All right, moving along. Jeremy Mutz, don't forget that name. I like Jeremy. I will say, you know, he was in the documentary, and I get a good feeling from him. You know, when I read him, I feel like his heart is in the right place. He seems like a decent guy to me. He speaks well. He seems intelligent. He seems caring. I haven't seen anything about him that's turned me off thus far. Um, but I think Jeremy's probably a little bit of a dreamer and an idealist and not as much of a realist. And I think he thought he could fight City Hall, so to speak. And there are a lot of people who think that, but it's a bigger job than just one person can do. And I think he tried to do the right thing, and as a result, he got fucked. And that happens to a lot of people who try to do the right thing. It's sad, but true. Okay, going on. Moving along. Jeremy says on June 4th, 2017, I still have hope that this case will be solved. Oh, I already read that part. Hold on. I paused. The state attorney at one point said his office would go alone if LCSO didn't want to proceed. But the plug was pulled in April of 2016. This is a new day, new people in charge. I have hope current leaders will say, let's look at this. If we can answer this, let's answer it. The public will be pleased. No one will hold anything against current leaders. The people in Tallahassee will be pleased to have answers. In Jacksonville, JSO just made an arrest in a 1974 case. They took politics out of it and solved it. And see, this is what I think is the problem and why this case hasn't been solved yet is politics. So Jeremy's telling you, he's telling you what the problem is, okay? But for some reason, politics is preventing this case from being solved, at least thus far. They're probably waiting for everyone involved to die. Anyway, continuing on with Jeremy's comment, he says, because in reality, no one is criticizing the original people on the case. It's not an insult to the past sheriff, and you won't be stuck with it. The people will respect that you tried to clear it. I understand elections, and you can't stay a sheriff or state attorney without being smart politically, but some things are just more important than 4 or 5 votes one way or the other. They are just right. Doing something for the people that have waited 50 years for answers is right. Other parts of the country are showing that politics don't have to be involved in working these cases or not. A lot of people are about this case. I think they will start to demand something be done. So Jeremy was being ethical and having integrity and morals, and it didn't work. Sad, but this is reality, folks. It's depressing. What do you want me to say? Okay. Um, Someone responded and said, well said, the 2 older girls whose parents and sister were horrifically taken from them deserve justice. Tallahassee deserves justice. Um, and then they shared a link about a riveting radio program on the Sims murder case. I am going to highlight that, and I will put a link in the description to that radio show in case anybody's interested, and I will listen to it myself because I have not. Okay. Do, 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 do. Now, on February 1st of 2018, so we're getting closer to the present time. This was only 2 years ago. Vernon Fox says, Episode 11 proved that I did not kill Joy Sims. It also proved that Charlie did not kill her either. Her ring was a 1 carat diamond. I'm assuming he didn't say that, but that's what I'm assuming he means. In a Tiffany setting. Very nice, Vernon. Nice taste. If she punched someone with that ring, it would cut chunks of flesh. Although 1 carat's a little small. Just saying. I can't help it. Put in my snarky, obnoxious remarks. Okay, if she punched someone with that ring, it would cut chunks of flesh. It would have made distinct marks that could have been matched to her ring. Early episodes showed lies that law enforcement told. There was a witness who heard the gunshots and saw muzzle flashes in the bedroom window at 10:45 p.m. We were watching the credits for Munster Go Home at that time. Thanks for ceasing to comment, Vernon. Okay, so that was the first comment he had made in a really long time. I still don't understand how he can remember such things as we were watching the credits for Munster Go Home. Who has that kind of memory? I don't know. Seems a little odd to me. Um, Now, Anonymous commented back to Vernon saying, Vernon, I'm curious about something. You say you were watching the credits for the Munsters at 10:45 p.m. The handwritten police report from the next day, back in 1966, your account, I'll remind you, says that you did not stay until the end of the movie. So which is it? So, as you can see, people are pointing out inconsistencies in Vernon's stories over the years. He says also, this anonymous commenter, also in 2016, you claimed that you and Charlie went to a lover's lane before returning home. Is that the truth, or was it the credits? Or was your handwritten report accurate? Surely not all three can be true, given that Charlie was home at 11:05 p.m. to take her birth control pill, and you remember getting out of her car at exactly 11:07 p.m. Yet another inconsistency. For someone with such a specific memory, it seems you can't get your story down on this. So please, for all of us, one more time, Did you leave the movie early, as you claimed in 1966, stay for the credits, as you claim here, or go to a lover's lane, as you claimed in 2016? Vernon does reply and says, Dear Anonymous, it is clear that you would make an incompetent DA. Either I had said that we started watching the credits, which began with a big red "the end." I'm sorry, not either. He started that sentence with earlier. I had said that we started watching the credits, which began with a big red "the end" and continued with small print credits in red. That was amusing, but we did not stay until the end of the credits, and thus we left before the end of the film. We went to watch the first color show that the Munsters did. Much later, I amused myself by saying that we went to Dog Lake to have sex. Only a fool would believe that we did not have sex at the Perry Highway Drive-In and then drove all the way out to Dog Lake to have sex. That is so funny to me. No detective would believe that tall tale. You could call it a lie, but it was just an amusing tale to me. But the main point is that neither Charlie nor I had anything to do with the Sims murders. And then he goes on to say, um, now that comment was left at 2:32 in the afternoon on February 3rd, 2018, and then he obviously stews for a few days and then comes back on February the 8th at 9 p.m. and says, just in case you haven't heard, there was no DNA recovered from the crime scene evidence. So there was nothing to check my DNA against. But the FDLE has my DNA profile anyway. So I thought that was. Ooh. Sorry, I just. Oop, I'm hearing some puppy squeals. Please hold the line. I need to check that. I'll be right back. It's probably just Nick's wanting to come in, but let me check. Sorry about that. Wayne got these. I love these smart bones for dogs. Listen to her. You'd think she's being hurt, because they don't have any rawhide. They're one of my more favorite dog treats, and these ones are like little round balls. This was a good find by Wayne. They're like little round balls, and inside is something shaky that's edible for the dogs. And Juju and Nix love them. Very good treat for the dogs. Okay. Um, so back to the DNA. You know, Vernon was suggesting that he gave his DNA and it was being tested, and that within a few months, some results would be forthwith that would either exonerate him or convict him. That's what he was trying to convey, it would have seemed to me. But then you find out that no, he was just playing games, and that, the authorities didn't have any DNA from the crime scene, so that there was nothing to compare his DNA against, which I don't know, that doesn't seem to be completely true from what I've read. So it's all a little confusing. And someone replies to him with, You're a weird man, Vernon. Also, reading your replies on this site and after watching the documentary in which you were interviewed, one thing is for sure. You are creepy. I'm not surprised people think you did it. I'm really not surprised. Maybe you're innocent, maybe you're not, but you're definitely living in your own world and not ours. Well, commenter, nuke, that is not uncommon of autistic people, and thus why there's a lot of advocacy to try to understand what it's like to be autistic. So I don't think you're attacking him for the right reasons here. So what if he's weird, and so what if he's creepy? That isn't really the point. The point is he a murderer, and was he, involved in these murders of this family? Um, okay, moving along. And then, there's more people just attacking him, which I don't need to get into. But I will read Jeremy Mutz's comment. Vernon, the case is important to a lot of people, and I hope maybe one day we will know exactly what happened. And it is my hope that whomever did do this, is held accountable. Many people were tarnished with this in one way or another, including a young man who was 15 at the time and the Baptist preacher, neither of whom did it, in my view, yet their families had to endure the suspicion, rumors, and so forth. I mean, you do have to remember this was 1966 in a very small town. It affected the whole town, it changed the whole town. You know, I don't think there was anyone who lived there who didn't feel somehow affected by this crime. It caused a lot of fear and a lot of anger. So yeah, it really did change. Like I say, it changed the whole atmosphere and landscape of the entire town. Okay. Of course, more than anything, the Sims and Solly families have been hurt beyond measure. They desire to know what happened to their loved ones. I want to say something about the evidence. Circumstances do tell us something. They may only give us a small part of what happened, but they are something nonetheless. And I do tend to agree with Mr. Mutz on that statement. However, they don't get a conviction in court. I mean, that's it. That doesn't mean it's fair, but that's that. Um, Charlie was reported to have missed classes at Madison College the Monday after the murders. That would have been the 23rd of October, 1966. It stood out to people. Do you recall that? Why do you think she missed classes that day? Also, DNA is not a static science. It's getting better, much better than when this case was first analyzed about 1997 to 2000. Y23 testing, for example, that is better able to zero in and pick up male DNA. In my opinion, two people did this, and I would have to say that one subject would be more worried about his or her DNA being present at the crime scene or on the body rather than the other subject. I think one of the two helped tie the victims and may have used the gun, while the other person, the one with the knife, was I don't even know this word, a peeker, and was the one who left his or her DNA. So essentially, it sounds to me that Jeremy is suggesting here that he does feel that Vernon and Charlie are responsible for this crime. Okay, and Vernon responds with, perhaps someday DNA techniques will be developed which can separate the DNA con- contributed by law enforcement personnel and others who handled the evidence from the unknown DNA of the perpetrator. Jeremy replies with, we do know another circumstance. The police bugged the car driven by Morticia, which is Charlie. She and her companion sat and watched LCSO drain Styles Pond and laughed about them doing so. Thought it was very funny. It seems out of a number of suspects, only two have ever thought any aspect of this case was funny or thought it was something to joke about. It is perhaps a way for the killers to process what they did, to live with themselves, or perhaps a way to relive and enjoy their perfect crime. Homicide has a way of showing up in a person's behavior, whether they think they can hide it or not. I think that's why Morticia, or Charlie, missed classes the Monday after the murders, and why she had such emotional problems in the 1980s, and why we have a loving Morticia and a homicidal Morticia, as explained by her former husband. And I do tend to agree with him. And Vernon just replies with, "That story is false." And Jeremy replies with, "Vernon, I appreciate your reply. Now we're up to March at this point of 2018. March 26th is when this comment was left. The account that she missed classes came from people at Madison College. Do you think they were mistaken about that? People can get things wrong, and if you have other information on that and where she was, it may help to clear this up. On the loving versus homicidal comments that came from your interview with Kyle Jones, am I misinterpreting what you said in that conversation? Finally, the erratic or violent behavior Charlie displayed in Jacksonville is a matter of court record. Some of it involves sneaking into a home rather skillfully. I think you'd agree that episodes like that can sometimes give insight into whether a person is capable of a violent crime. I realize that is not always the case. I don't want to see this case put on any innocent person. That doesn't help anyone. I've tried to set the record straight on C.A. Roberts, but I think he, to this day, is seen as a killer, and that's unfortunate, where the video evidence cleared him, and Larry Campbell thought he was cleared. Some people still say he committed suicide, and the actual record shows that he died in a traffic accident out in Texas, and his passing was in no way related to guilt over what he'd done to the Sims. Yet the rumors still persist. I don't want to see anyone treated unfairly, but if we can find answers to this case, that would bring some comfort to many people. And I do agree with him. And then his last sentence in that comment was, "The Styles Pond incident. You were aware that pond was drained to search for the weapons?" And Vernon replies with, "We did not watch them drain the pond." Okay, I'm going to interject here before I even continue reading and say, Vernon, he didn't say you did. He said she did, Charlie. Moving along. Vernon then replies again, "We did not sit in a parked car and watch the LCSO drain Styles Pond. I do not. I do know that they used a pump because the spillway valve did not work. The photos show that they did not screen the muck for artifacts. It appears that they did not do a well-organized search of the muck bottom." I'm going to pause here and say it's also not uncommon for perpetrators of a crime to taunt law enforcement, which it sounds like Vernon's doing here. The photos show a disorganized search. Students of the archaeology department did much more organized searches and screening of the local historical sites. Search teams with dogs checked the ravine near the house, the woods, and the stream leading to Styles Pond. They found no indication of the killers heading to Styles Pond. I always thought that the purpose of draining the pond was mainly to help prepare the roadbed for Boone Boulevard. Then there's a commenter just trying to taunt Vernon. I'm going to skip over that one. And Vernon replies with, "People who make false accusations against the innocent will burn in hell for eternity." Very religious, Vernon. It's a very religious statement. And then he says, "But you will beat us all there." So he's got a lot of anger, a lot of resentment. Jeremy on April 12th of 2018 says, "We know the timeline in this case pretty well. Mr. and Mrs. Sims were seen shopping at a local grocery store at 7:30 p.m. They returned home and remained there with their youngest daughter, 12-year-old Joy, for the rest of the evening. We also know something about what was going on in the Sims world in the days leading up to the murders. Mr. Sims cut short a business trip to return home, which was unusual. We know he returned home early one afternoon shortly before the murders, which was something he never did. He did so because one of his girls telephoned him, scared about someone in the neighborhood. He had to come home to reassure them. We know that in the months leading up to the murders, Mr. Sims caught an intruder in the home. Mr. Sims was alone in the house and sensed someone was inside. He thought it was his wife, but when he got up to look, a male figure ran from him. We know that Mrs. Sims replaced all her underwear in the weeks before the murders. It is possible that a prowler went through her underwear and she discarded them. The afternoon of the homicide, we know that Mr. and Mrs. Sims were speaking in hushed tones, having a serious discussion that they didn't want the girls to overhear. Yet one of them may have heard the conversation was about Joy. Back to the night of the murders. The most consistent witness accounts would put the shots being fired between 10:30 and 10:45, and it would have the killers leaving the house sometime between 10:45 and 11:10. We know at that time that there was a dirt road that led from Tharp to Styles Pond, and that there was a well-used path from the ravine up into Parkside. Come here, lovey. You want to come up? Come here, darling. Oh, you getting so big. You can't eat this. Hold on one second. I just lost my place. Oh, you so lovey. And she's wagging her tail like a lunatic. So, yeah, that's pretty creepy. It's someone who was in the Sims house. Okay? It sounds like they were having an ongoing problem with someone pursuing the entire family, almost maybe, terrorizing that family. So I don't think this was like the murder was the only incident. I don't think it was just, a random crime. Clearly it wasn't a burglary, all right? And I don't think this was just an isolated incident. I think this family was terrorized leading up to the murders. I think the parents were terrorized. I think Mrs. Sims was terrorized. I think little Joy Sims was terrorized. You know, possibly not the older girls. I don't know if they're still alive. Maybe someday they want to discuss that. And I certainly mean no disrespect to them if they're still living. Oh, I'm so sorry, little one. You're just so wiggly. Um, I think this is just such a sad and tragic case. And I also think it is just a complete miscarriage of justice that there has never been a conviction in this case. So I do think the Sims family was terrorized leading up to the murders. And I guess my biggest question at this point in the game would be, did the Sims family turn to law enforcement for help, for assistance? And does law enforcement have that information? And that has never been shared. And it's a huge cover up so that law enforcement doesn't get the blame for not protecting this family. That's what it seems like to me thus far. But let me continue on. Um, the afternoon of the homicide, we know that Mr. and Mrs. Sims were speaking in hushed tones, having a serious discussion that they didn't want the girls to overhear, yet one of them may have heard the conversation was about Joy. Back to the night of the murders. The most. Oh my God, she's biting the bed. The most consistent witness accounts would put the shots being fired between 10:30 and 10:45, and it would have the killers leaving the house sometime between 10:45 and 11:10. You're not helpful, little puppy. We know at that time that there was a dirt road that led from Tharp to Styles Pond, and that there was a well-used path from the ravine up into Parkside. A killer or killers could have walked to and from the Sims house easily without being seen, and could have easily used a car or a motorcycle parked on that dirt road. or they could have easily walked onto the streets or left a car on the streets without notice, since there were parties going on that night with the football game. People weren't watching out for murderers that night. They could have followed the postman always rings twice plan for murder. A murder that was casual enough, it didn't look like a murder, or it was a harder to solve one because of its random and haphazard aspects. The football game is important. One suspect said that he'd know the pattern of the victims. I think he did. Mr. Sims was known to listen to the FSU games on the radio. He also liked to watch Gunsmoke. So did I. I think the killer took advantage of that knowledge. As to who did this, the police, LSCO, and the Sheriff's Bureau investigated the Sims background heavily, down to looking through all of their receipts, which Mr. Sims kept religiously. They had no skeletons, no enemies, and even the man that Sims replaces at the DOE had no ill feelings toward him. Everything comes back to the perpetrator being someone that knew the family, that knew the area, that probably lived in the area or close by, and who had some anger toward the little girl or some sexual proclivity that was gratified by means of this crime. The FBI profiler, McLaughlin, certainly thought this was the case. So you remember I was wondering if an FBI profiler had become involved? Turns out he did. It is similar to the Bricka murder in Cincinnati. Some personal knowledge and some personal motivation was at play. It bears none of the trademarks of a professional killing. Some may say the killers may have tried to make this look like a personal or sexual crime. It's more common for killers to make a case look like a robbery or like a suicide, in my view. I think the manner in which this crime was committed provides us with important insights into the drives within the killers and what led them to do this terrible thing. I think that they lived with it and at times were proud of it, and at other times were nearly destroyed by what they'd unleashed from within themselves. Vernon replies with, there is no evidence to exclude the possibility that the killers were three men who were dropped off by a car on Gibbs, walked to the house, and were picked up by a car on Gibbs after the murders. Jeremy replies with, and the police took that seriously. They ran down the tag numbers that you gave them for various Valiant and Fury automobiles. However, no one else saw the same Fury or Valiant, with one odd feature as you described it in 1966. And later, Charlie said it was a VW that turned in front of her. So that was an interesting wrinkle thrown in. VW Beetles and Valiants look nothing alike. Everything has to be looked at, but I would submit the most likely parking place was down below on that dirt road. I think one of the killers returned to that car and drove home unobserved. Vernon replies with, I was mistaken about the make and model of the car. I looked at many photos of cars last month. It was a white four-door 1966 Plymouth Belvedere. Now we have a whole new car. The shape of the car, the rear passenger door, and the headlights allowed me to identify it correctly. I would posture that, or posit that, your memory just can't be that accurate about that car this far down the line. And he continues on with, thank you, I believe that. Whomever did this will not escape the judgment in the world to come. But it would sure be nice to know the truth now. What that would mean to so many in Tallahassee, as Joe Mitchell said in the 1987 interview with Larry Campbell and our friend, some interesting comments on Reddit. I wonder if Morticia is reading them. And I'm wondering if I'm missing a page here, because that didn't seem to flow. hold on a second. Unfortunately, Wayne helped me with printing these out, which I'm not going to let him do again because they all got out of order. Hold on a second, you guys. Let me see if these comments got out of order here. Okay, we already got through all those. And this is, yeah, I have a feeling there's just a page missing here, so I don't know what happened. Anyway, um, Jeremy does reply to the comment about the car and says, Vernon, I appreciate that about the Plymouth Belvedere. Where essentially Jeremy's just thanking Vernon for offering some more information that may or may not be accurate. Okay. Um, and Vernon replies with, although I did not know it that night, I believe that I saw two of the killers and their driver in the car that stopped next to me on Gibbs by the large tree near Stiles and opened the rear passenger door. They were looking to pick up the third killer, but I was not him. Again, I don't understand how he knows that. And forgive me, but I'm going to eat a little yogurt. Excuse me, just to get something in my belly. I haven't tried this flavor yet. I love these yogurts. Oui by Yoplait. This is the maple flavored one. I've never tried it before. Hopefully it's yummy. I love maple everything normally. I like also that these come in glass because I just do. I end up reusing them for things. Mm. Those French yogurts are so good, and I do like the maple. Okay. I don't understand how he can say they were looking to pick up the third. All these wild theories and stories he has. I don't really understand how he thinks he can analyze things to that extent. But anyway, he says they were looking to pick up the third killer, but I was not him. I was not wearing glasses, but the third killer was wearing glasses. I must have looked like him in the dark. After I was home in my bedroom, a witness saw the third killer wearing glasses on Gibbs and looking for his ride. The witness thought he was me. The witness was wrong. Just as the three men in the car thought that I was the third killer, the witness thought that the third killer wearing glasses was me. The witness did not know me well enough to know that I did not wear my reading glasses out in public. Mary Charles went a different direction and saw a different car that night. Jeremy replies with, that may clear up what the witness saw at that point. Which way do you think Mary Charles drove when she was returning to her home? Further west on Von Sile? I don't know if I'm pronouncing the names of these streets correctly. I'm just doing my best and guesstimating. Vernon replies with west on Stiles, north on Monticello, east on Von Sile, north on Hagen, west into Driveway. And then someone replies with Vernon, 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 and for the 10th time, your story changes. Professional killers would not be so stupid as to let anyone see them. I just find that story so ridiculous. Tallahassee, Florida back then was not a place that would ever need professional killers, fool. Why would they target a whole family and not just Mr. Sims? And how did one person tie them all up? I know if there was a killer in my house by himself, there was no way that I would just stand there while he put his gun down to tie me up. If I was Mr. Sims, one person would have to shoot me where I stood, not allowing him to herd us into a bedroom to kill us. Mrs. Sims would die protecting her daughters. I'm sure that her being shot in the leg was her trying to go to Joy and protect her. One of you held the gun and the other tied them up. Maybe all three killers drove a different car. You are either just an idiot, insane, or just plain stupid. I say all three. I don't think any of those things. I don't think he's insane. I definitely don't think he's stupid. And I don't think he's an idiot. I think he is enjoying all these interactions. I think he gets a kick out of the emotional charges he gets from discussing these things and from triggering people emotionally. And I also think he gets triggered emotionally. So, Vernon replies with, my story has not changed. I corrected my error in identifying the car. I revealed details that I was holding back from my defense lawyer, and I added my conclusions about the men I saw. Yes, I am foolish for thinking that you could change your mind when confronted with real facts. Your prejudice against me knows no bounds. The legal system has requirements of evidence and proof that you are not encumbered by. And Vernon also says, how did a home invasion by he says, he writes there, but he obviously means three, armed men become one man who had to put down his gun to tie them all up? Well, because Vernon, it's your story and no one else's, and no one else believes your story. And then he says, how could you get confused about my story of one car with three killers and a driver who dropped the killers off, left the neighborhood, and returned later to pick them up? How did you get three killers parking three cars at 641 Muriel Court and leaving the cars parked there during the murders? Vernon, he was just being sarcastic. And here's the thing, too, that I'm noticing myself about Vernon being an autistic person myself. He is working on what he thinks an autistic person would respond by not understanding, by portraying that he doesn't understand what this person is saying. But the thing is, Vernon, you can't bullshit a bullshitter, okay? Now, being autistic myself, at my age of 51, I know enough from my education, from my experience, etc., that I can interpret what people are saying despite my autism, and so can you. So you're being a bullshitter here, and I'm calling you out. Okay. Vernon then says, let me review my story for you. And that also makes me think that he's not diagnosed autistic and he's probably just pretending to be autistic and going by the definitions of what he thinks, of how he thinks an autistic person would react, and thinking maybe if he did get arrested, he can use his autism as a defense. That's my guess. Vernon then says, let me review my story for you. Mary Charles and I were at the Perry Highway Drive-In that night. After the end of the movie, while the credits were running, we left to go to Parkside. We arrived in Parkside after the murders, and we had the misfortune to arrive as the killers were looking for the third killer, who I think was left behind to tidy up while the other two could meet their ride on schedule. I hope that is not too confusing for you. Well, it's not too confusing for me, Vernon, but it's definitely not believable. Okay, Jeremy Mutz replies with, I think the killer or killers told the family that it was a robbery and that no one would get hurt if they cooperated. I also think that he, she, they had the element of surprise and the impact of two weapons, which quickly made resistance unlikely. The family went along with being tied up, not suspecting anything more than a robbery would happen. This was before Sharon Tate or and other crimes that really shocked the nation, long before 9/11, and so people wouldn't have had the mindset then that we certainly appreciate now. For example, we have to fight for survival and we don't take comfort in the promises of a person or persons who are about the act of a home invasion. I am willing to listen to any facts that one would unlock this mystery. If anyone has information, I am always willing to listen with an open mind. There may yet be people out there that have information that could help, folks that have not come forward for many different reasons. I will also say that the police did take seriously the disgruntled colleague theory, and they took seriously whether some problem may have followed the Sims from Mississippi. And they took the scenario of C.A. Roberts having someone kill the Sims seriously. I would look at everything, but I think it will come back to who might have had a reason or believe they had a reason to hate the little girl. Because the way the crime was carried out speaks to an intense hatred and anger, and it speaks to some sort of sexual gratification that was achieved or attempted by carrying out this crime. And Vernon replies with, no, I said that there were three men in the house at the time of the shootings. I saw the driver and two men looking to pick up the third killer when I returned to Parkside approximately 15 to 20 minutes after the shootings. Since there were no cell phones then, they had to catch their ride on a schedule. See, again, he's anticipating their thoughts even, and that's really, yeah. I would guess the pickup was scheduled for 11 p.m. I'm only guessing at why the third man was left behind and picked up later. Neither Mary Charles nor I had anything to do with the Sims murders. She never said anything which was actually legally incriminating. If she had, she would have been arrested and charged. I understand your hate, but it is based on lies told by people without any facts and Mary Charles's false and misleading statements. I think he probably intimidated Charlie to keep her mouth shut after that time she went to the cops. Somehow blackmailed her. Either intimidated her, threatened her, or blackmailed her. And he's probably really, really angry and resentful that he can't just kill her. And that, you know, um, that it's her big mouth that's gotten him into trouble. You know, put him through all this trouble as he sees it all these years. And I do think he is holding in a lot of anger and hatred. You can hear it. Jeremy on April 21st, 2018 at 7:58 p.m. says, interesting detail. Jenny walked through the house and discovered the bodies. She walked back to use the telephone and noticed that the front door was ajar. It is possible one of the killers hid in the closet near the front door of that house. And then slipped out while she was on the phone in the kitchen. One of the killers may have been interrupted by the car pulling up that dropped Jenny off after babysitting. And please excuse me for one moment because I have to let Juju in. She's barking. Hold I'm back. Sorry about that. I had to deal with Barco. And I'm finishing up this maple yogurt. I really recommend these. They're very yummy. Mmm, so good. So, so yummy. These are my most favorite yogurts right now. They're the French style yogurts, and I love them. Really, really yummy. Okay, done with my yogurt. I just want to finish up this, and then we're going to talk about it some more this evening. Okay. Another comment made by Vernon on April 26th of 2018. He says, if the cops found my body on the corner of Gibbs and Stiles, dead from 38 caliber bullets that matched the bullets from the Sims murder, then that would be, then that would but, all right, obviously has a typo here. But what he's saying is, then that would be a clue that the killers went that way, and I was not one of them, but they were smarter than that. Him sort of telling about how smart the killers are, I also think psychologically he's telling you he's a killer and he's smart and, you're stupid. If the. And then he says, by Sunday morning, many people thought I was a suspect. And then on May 1st of 2018, he says, okay, my good buddies Jim and Pam, it's time to shut down this freak show. Just remember, never wisen up a chump. VBF. So he's getting irritated with people that are challenging him on this comment board. And then somebody posted something under the screen name of his humble servant 12 on May 9th, 2018 at 5:22 a.m. Has anyone looked into the other murders in Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, and then the Zodiac murders, all with striking similarities? All worked in either computers or were CEOs for companies like Monsanto and Bell and Howell. I believe there are copycat scenarios involved. I also don't rule out Satanism, oh Jesus Christ, or organizations above the pay grade of local officers. I would delve into Larry Campbell, first on the scene, 24 years old, then his over 40-year career in law enforcement in Tally. I believe he was covering for someone possibly. I'm sure he was probably covering, but it wasn't anything to do with Satanism. I mean, come on, people. Is that like every Christian's initial thought? It's so stupid. Silly. Okay, moving along. He says he has had many accusations about him in the 40 years I've lived in Tallahassee. And perhaps he has, and perhaps he's a killer. I doubt it's related to Satanism, though. Christ. Okay, I'm not going to continue to read that commenter's comments because he's clearly just a little bit of a crazy zealot and conspiracy theorist. Okay, Jeremy says on May 15th of 2018, his humble servant, I agree the other cases may bear significance. For instance, the Bricka murders in Cincinnati took place 3 weeks before this case. It received national coverage and the victims were bound and so forth. I think the killer or killers in this case would have been familiar with the Bricka case and copied it to some extent. They certainly would have heard about it in Tallahassee in September of 1966. There are many interesting ways to think about these cases, and in fact, if you connect the dots, literally, between some of the murders, they form an almost straight line from Michigan down to Tallahassee. Valerie Percy and Mrs. Bricka were both flight attendants and both murdered within a 2 to 3 week span in different cities. You can give yourself a very bad headache trying to figure out how the cases from this Summer of Homicide, 1966, might fit together. Unfortunately, I think they are coincidental and related only in the potential for copycatting. In Cold Blood was released just a few months before the Sims murders, and it is as or more similar than any of the other 1966 cases. They were also there were also movies like The Killers, 1946, and Compulsion, 1959, that may have influenced this crime right down to the gags and how the suspects followed the investigation. Larry Campbell wasn't the first detective on scene. Two Tallahassee Police Department men came first. Did then 25-year-old Campbell consciously or subconsciously go easier on the family with prominent FSU affiliations? I don't know. We may never know. At the time, the FSU criminologist was a big deal, and after an experiment to train officers through TCC didn't last, FSU was the only game in town to get a criminology police related degree. The man was a professor and nationally known. Would they have been a little bit more gentle with him or his family than the average fella from Woodville or Frenchtown? Probably. I do know at one point State Attorney Bill Hopkins told law enforcement, "I'm getting calls from FSU people. Either charge him or lay off." This person came very close to being charged as the handwritten draft of a Tallahassee Democrat press release clearly shows. I also know that the polygraph was administered in a much more deferential way than what the typical Joe six pack might have received. Signs of deception were seen, but the criminologist was told everything's okay, or words to that effect. So essentially, Jeremy's telling us all here that there was a cover up. Leon County has several notable cases that weren't solved or were ruled solved but leave you scratching your head. Granville Baker, David Salters, David Mays. Maybe everything was handled on the up and up, but the process hasn't instilled confidence in the public. For example, in Sims, Mike Wood saying if anyone else had touched those files, they would have been fired. Or there is no political rush to look at the case. How does any of that help instill confidence? And in Mays, apparently, some evidence was left untested, and the grand jury got to see very little physical evidence. Again, it may have been a good result, but the process resembles a 1940s B movie backroom meeting, clouded by cigar smoke, when it could have been totally transparent. For example, the grand jury saw everything and they came back thus. Ego gets in the way, that is a big part of it. Hopefully, new people in place will prevent that in the future. He goes on to respond to another commenter, Mr. Mutz, by saying, "The case cries out for justice. It would give an entire town a bit of comfort to know for sure what happened and who did it. It's not unsolvable by any means. There is a lot of evidence that has not been talked about, things I certainly won't talk about publicly." Well, Jeremy, since you were fired, you're more than welcome to talk about them here. I'd be happy to interview you. But LCS, as long as you have no political aspirations for the future, I don't see why you couldn't. And I certainly don't see why you wouldn't want to at this point. Nobody's got your back. But LCSO has it, and I hope they'll use it. That includes what can be done with advances in DNA testing. And now, he said this, mind you, almost 2 years ago. Um, It is a lot better than it was even 5 years ago. I agree 100% with the state attorney. Jack Campbell said in the Elijah James case, a murderer shouldn't just get away with it because he was smart. That, incidentally, was the first conviction for a homicide without a body in Leon County. That wasn't an easy case. This one isn't, but it is most definitely not impossible. Now, Vernon makes a comment on June 13th of 2018, and he says, "And remember that according to Mutz on his radio interview, law enforcement thought that circumstances indicated that she was the one that punched and stabbed Joy with her left hand. No deal would have been made. Larry was wrong. Both of us were fans of the Munsters." And we were at the Perry Highway Drive-In watching Munster Go Home until the credits ran at 10:45 p.m. And I was just talking about drive-ins recently, wasn't I? How fun they are and how there are still some. There's one in Rhode Island. I know there's one in New Hampshire. And I don't know if there's any in the South, but God, I love drive-ins. I think we need to go to the drive-in soon. Anyway, um, a lot of other commenters, a lot of other commenters, and Ghost Queen, May 28th, 2019. I'm starting to work on this case. The first thing I plan to do is to head to Meridian to pay my respects. I haven't done that yet. I was a liar. Well, not true. I did have intentions to do that, but it just didn't happen. I will be doing a series on YouTube. Search for Ghost Queen. I invite anyone interested in contributing to contact me on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Happy to share my phone number via DM, still am. And somebody commented, but nothing has come of it. Now, what I am going to do is catch up on any comments that have been left since my comment, in case there's anything relevant to talk about. But that would be it for that particular area. Now, there are other areas to investigate, and that would be on Reddit. So I'm going to have more printing out to done. I mean, people, that was like a stack that we just got through. Okay? I think that was over 100 pages that I ended up printing out. Perhaps I won't have to print everything out next time. We'll see. Maybe I could just use my phone and go through. But we are going to return to the Sims case this evening. Now that I'm rolling with it, I'm kind of into it. And I just want to keep going with it. And then close it up and wrap it up so that I can start focusing on some other things. But this case spoke to me. And I've learned to trust my instincts as to where spirit takes me and leads me. And I feel that, it's often done for a reason. And people come into my life for a reason and end up contacting me for reasons. Sometimes spirit leads those people to contact me and get me to, because I am autistic and because I do have ADD, it can be hard to get my focus. I understand that. And I know it's frustrating for spirit. I know it's frustrating for people. But eventually, with enough persistence, you can get my focus and attention. And then, and then I'm led certain ways. So I was led to this case, I believe, by the spirits of the Sims family who want to see justice. They want to see, you know, their friends and family that remain have some sense of closure with this case because, you know, it didn't just affect the family, it really did affect the whole town and just so much unrest and strife and turmoil. And it's just amazing that the actions of just a couple of individuals, it's like a ripple in a pond and it affects so many people. So, certainly, this is a case that should have seen the perpetrators face justice because it certainly had a huge effect on not only the Sims family and their friends and supporters, but also the entire town of Tallahassee was forever changed by this one case. So, and it seems to continue on. It's affecting more people and more lives. It's like a never ending ripple. So, it's not like a small pebble being thrown into a pond. It's like when you install one of those fountains that's electric and it just keeps going and going and going. So, somebody really needs to put a stop to it, an end to it, and have justice be served, in my opinion, in Ghost Queen's humble opinion, in my royal opinion. So, but I don't want to spend forever on this case myself. Focusing on it, I have lots of different things to focus on. So I do want to get through it as quickly and efficiently as possible. So that's it for this afternoon. It is 2:35 here in Louisiana. It's very overcast out. We're supposed to get a really big storm tomorrow. So I want to go out into the yard and clean up and get ready for that. And get the barn ready for the dogs who are probably going to bunk down there for the storm. Or maybe I'll put them in my carport. I'm not sure, but I want to make sure that, you know, the animals have shelter if they need it. All the local animals. Speaking of all the local animals, I don't think I've seen Midnight, my little favorite kitty from next door. Now I'm feeling worried about her. I might have to go investigate that today. Also, I love Midnight, and I haven't seen him lately. He's a he. And then they have a new dog in the back that's very barky and loud, and I don't know what family is staying back there, but suddenly a dog appeared. It's barking, 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 barking. Anyway, and it was running loose at times, but I think they have it tied up now, which is why it's probably barking so much. And Juju does the same thing. She hates being tied up, and she barks if she gets tangled and whatnot. The dog's life. Anyway, expect to see me this evening, probably around 9 o'clock Central Time. And you never know. I could go a little earlier. I could go a little bit later. But please like the videos. Make sure you give them a thumbs up if you check them out and you like them. And if you have someone you think might be interested in this case, and it is an interesting case, please share with your friends. And make sure you sub and make sure you hit the bell. Otherwise, you won't get notified about when I'm streaming. So, that's all for today and until this evening. But I'm definitely coming back tonight, so join me then if you're so inclined. And until then, have a great day. Um, be loving, be kind, be generous, be sweet, be forgiving. Be good, but not too good. And don't forget to tell your loved ones everything you want to say because you never know which day is your last day or theirs. I got a wobbly crown. I can't wait to show you my wig that should be here tomorrow, my new wig. And I'm going to be ordering a new crown as well. It might be a tiara though, because the crowns are a pain in the butt, quite honestly. I think we'll keep the crown for special events, and I'm going to order a fancier tiara, um, just because they're easier to wear. But that should be fun and exciting also. So, don't let the demons bite, and until next time, I bid you adieu. Ciao, Bella, folks. See you soon. I'm out. Poof.